good morning, class.
Good
Morning, Miss Reisinger.
Thank you. Please make sure you have out your notebook, a pen or pencil, and your reading on your desk before we get started.
Okay.
All right, are we ready to begin?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, please raise your hand if you've read Goldilocks and the Three Bears before. Okay, you can put your hand down. Now raise your hand if you've read The Tortoise and the Hare before. Okay, you can put your hand down. Can somebody raise their hand and tell me how the characters in the two stories are different? Emma?
Folk tales, the Three Bears and the Hare and Tortoise.
Mm-hmm.
Within the Three Bears, you had a human character in there, plus the animals. But in the Hare and the Tortoise, it was just the animals alone.
Correct. Goldilocks is the human in the Goldilocks and the Three Bears story, but in the Tortoise and the Hare, all the characters are animals.
Right.
Good job. Okay, now I know this seems like a small difference, but it matters because the two stories are from different genres. Think back to last year when you learned about the word genre. Who can raise their hand and tell me what genre means? Joan?
Genre is a category of literature characterized by similarities in content.
Good job, Joan. Okay, please take a minute and write this in your notebook. It's written right here for you to look at. Who can tell me a type of genre that they've read before? Dan?
Science fiction.
Good. Okay, anything else you can think of?
Mystery.
Mystery. Okay, good.
And I like biographies.
Biographies. All right.
Is horror stories, is that a genre?
Yeah, horror
Okay.
is a genre. Thank you,
Okay.
Dan. Okay, today you're going to learn how to differentiate genres of folktales and fables. So we're going to read an example of a folktale and an example of a fable. And by the end of the class, you're going to be expected to draw a Venn diagram to compare and contrast the characteristics of folktales and fables. And you're going to be expected to get at least 4 out of the 5 characteristics correctly on your Venn diagram. So the first story we're going to read is Jack and the Beanstalk. This is your example of a folktale. While we're reading, please pay attention to the characters and try to figure out what you think the main idea is of this story. As usual, please make 3 annotations in the story and circle any unfamiliar words. I will start reading, and then I will call on some of our classmates to continue reading the story. Let's begin. Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, there lived a widow woman and her son Jack on their small farm in the country. Every day, Jack would help his mother with their chores, chopping the wood, weeding the garden, and milking the cow. But despite all their hard work, Jack and his mother were very poor, with barely enough money to keep themselves fed. "What shall we do? What shall we do?" said a widow one spring day. "We don't have enough money to buy seed for the farm this year. We must sell our cow, Old Bess, and with the money, buy enough seed to plant a good crop." Dan, will you continue reading, please?
Yes, Miss Reisinger. All right, Mother, said Jack. It's market day today. I'll go into town and sell Bessie. So Jack took the cow's halter in his hand, walked through the garden gate, and headed off towards town. He hadn't gone far when he met a funny-looking old man who said to him, "Good morning, Jack." "Good morning to you," said Jack, wondering how the little old man knew his name. "Where are we off to this fine morning?" asked the man. "I'm going to market to sell our cow, Bessie." "Well, what a helpful son you are," exclaimed the man. "I have a special deal for such a good boy like you." The little old man looked around to make sure no one was watching and then opened his hand to show Jack what he held. beans? Asked Jack, looking a little confused.
Thank you, Dan. I'll keep reading. 3 magical bean seeds, to be exact, young man. 1, 2, 3. So magical are they that you plant them overnight. By morning they grow right up to the sky, promised the funny little man. And because you're such a good boy, they're all yours in trade for that old milking cow. Really, said Jack, and you're quite sure they're magical? I am indeed, and if it doesn't turn out to be true, you can have your cow back. Well, that sounds fair, said Jack, as he handed over Betsy's halter, pocketed the beans, and headed back home to show his mother. Back already, Jack? Asked his mother. I see you haven't got old Bess. You've sold her so quickly. How much did you get for her? Jack smiled and reached into his pocket. Just look at these beans, Mother. They're magical. Plant them overnight and... What? Cried Jack's mother. Oh, silly boy. How could you give away our milking cow for 3 measly beans? And with that, she did the worst thing Jack had ever seen her do. She burst into tears. Joan, will you keep reading for us?
Yes. Jack ran upstairs to his little room in the attic. So sorry he was, and threw the beans angrily out of the window, thinking, how could I have been so foolish? I'd broken my mother's heart. After much tossing and turning, at last Jack dropped off to sleep. When Jack woke up the next morning, his room looked strange. The sun was shining into part of it like it normally did, and yet all the rest was quite dark and shady. So Jack jumped up and dressed himself and went out to the window. And what do you think he saw? Why, the beans he had thrown out of the window into the garden had sprung up like a big beanstalk, which went up and up and up until it reached the sky.
Thank you, Joan. Using the leaves and twisty vines like the rungs of a ladder, Jack climbed and climbed until at last he reached the sky. And when he got there, he found a long, broad road winding its way through the clouds to a tall, square castle off in the distance. Jack ran up the road toward the castle, and just as he reached it, the door swung open to reveal a horrible lady giant with one great eye in the middle of her forehead. As soon as Jack saw her, he turned to run away, but she caught him and dragged him into the castle. Don't be in such a hurry. I'm sure a growing boy like you would be a nice big breakfast, said the great big tall woman. It's been so long since I got to make a breakfast for a boy. Well, the lady giant wasn't such a bad sort after all, even if she was a bit odd. She took Jack into the kitchen and gave him a chunk of cheese and a glass of milk. But Jack had only taken a few bites when thump, 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 the whole house began to tremble with the noise of someone coming. Goodness gracious me, it's my husband, said the giant woman, wringing her hands. What on earth shall I do? There's nothing he likes better than boys broiled on toast, and I haven't any bread left. Oh dear, I never should have let you stay for breakfast. Here, come quick and jump in here. And she hurried Jack into a large copper pot sitting beside the stove just as her husband, the giant, came in. Emma, will you keep reading for us?
He ducked himself inside the kitchen and said, I'm ready for breakfast. I'm so hungry I could eat 3 cows. Ah, what's this I smell? Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I have his bones to grind my bread. Nonsense, dear, said his wife. You haven't had a boy for breakfast in years. Now you go and wash up, and by the time you come back, your breakfast will be ready for you. So the giant went off to tidy up. Jack was about to run for it when the woman stopped him. Wait till he sleep. Wait till he doesn't sleep, she said. He always has a snooze after breakfast. Jack peeked out of the copper pot just as the giant returned to the kitchen carrying a basket filled with golden eggs and a sickly-looking white hen. The giant poked the hen and growled, lay, and the hen laid an egg made of gold, which the giant added to the basket.
Thank you, Emma. After his breakfast, the giant went to the closet and pulled out a golden harp with the face of a sad young girl. The giant poked the harp and growled, play, and the harp began to play a gentle tune, while her lovely face sang a lullaby. Then the giant began to nod his head and to snore until the house shook. When he was quite sure the giant was asleep, Jack crept out of the copper pot and began to tiptoe out of the kitchen. Just as he was about to leave, He heard the sound of the harp girl weeping. Jack bit his lip, sighed, and returned to the kitchen. He grabbed the sickly hen and the singing harp and began to tiptoe back out. But this time the hen gave a cackle